Welcome to This Explainer. Today we're diving into a really incredible 5-minute overview of a deeply impactful lesson. It's actually one of 10 key lessons drawn straight from the Christian Care Mentor course, and we're specifically focusing on a vital, but frankly totally misunderstood topic: prayer as presence. Let's think about this for a second. We know that as a care mentor, prayer is the absolute foundation of what you do, right? But here's the challenge. Praying with someone who is actively hurting, like a caregiver, can feel surprisingly difficult. I mean, have you ever felt that hesitation?
Okay, let's dive into this. It is incredibly common to feel uncertain when you're sitting right across from a caregiver who is in deep, overwhelming pain. Honestly, many well-meaning mentors absolutely panic in these moments, and the source material highlights that this panic usually goes one of two ways. Some mentors respond by over-praying, using way too many words, moving too fast, and unconsciously trying to sort of fix the whole difficult situation right then and there with this perfectly crafted prayer. But then, on the flip side, other mentors completely hesitate. The awkwardness and the sheer fear of saying the wrong thing causes them to just avoid prayer altogether. Now, both reactions are totally natural, but neither actually serves the caregiver. Because if prayer isn't handled with deep sensitivity, it can unintentionally shut down honest conversation completely and leave the caregiver feeling totally unseen.
That brings us to Section 1, A Tale of Two Prayers, and the story of James and Daniel.
And this brilliantly illustrates exactly what we're talking about. Take the story of James and Daniel. James was a mentor who initially tried to pray over Daniel with this long, heavily scripture-laden prayer, basically trying to fix Daniel's pain over his wife's chronic illness. And the result? A massive wall went up. Daniel just grew distant. But then, James pivoted. At their next meeting, he just listened. He kept it incredibly brief, and he simply asked for God's presence. By praying with him instead of over him, Daniel finally felt safe enough to actually open up. It was a real game changer.
To do this requires a massive perspective shift. As this quote beautifully puts it, in Christian care mentoring, prayer is not something we do to the caregiver, it is something we gently enter together before God. You see, prayer isn't a performance. It's not some magical tool we use to force immediate solutions onto a really complex problem. It is simply a shared experience of, figuratively speaking, taking the caregiver by the hand and turning together toward God.
Let's move to Section 2 and see how this builds. The ACTS prayer model, or Building the Mentor's Foundation.
Long before you ever step foot in the room to pray with a caregiver, you need to prepare your own heart by praying for them in private. The course outlines the classic ACTS prayer model to really ground yourself. First, you start with adoration, so honoring God for who He is, completely regardless of the current circumstances. Then confession, honestly bringing your own faults to God. Next up is thanksgiving, recognizing God's grace. And finally, supplication, bringing our specific needs to God. Grounding your personal prayer life in this model ensures that you approach your mentoring sessions with deep humility and alignment with God rather than relying on your own strength.
Which leads us to Section 3, How to Pray Together. These are the practical guidelines for the room.
So, once you've prepared privately, how do you actually pray aloud in the room without completely overwhelming the caregiver? Well, here are 4 essential, super practical steps. First, always ask permission. Gently ask, would you like me to pray with you? Not for you, but with you. That honors their emotional space. Second, keep it short. Third, keep it simple. And fourth, keep it sincere. Prayer in a mentoring relationship is not a sermon. Use natural, everyday conversational language that directly reflects the very things they just shared with you.
Now, we absolutely have to heed this warning. Imposing your personal prayer style can overwhelm the caregiver and create distance. One of the most common mistakes that incredibly well-meaning mentors make is bringing their own intense preferences into a really fragile situation. Praying way too long, using overly formal language, or quoting scripture in a way that feels a bit like a correction rather than comfort. These things instantly shift the focus away from the caregiver's actual experience. Remember, this moment is not about expressing your own profound relationship with God. It's about gently supporting what God is already doing in the life of the caregiver.
Let's look at Section 4, Releasing the Burden and Trusting God's Hidden Work.
As a mentor, it's so easy to carry a heavy, silent responsibility. You sit with people in deep pain, and you mistakenly start to believe that it is literally your job to fix their circumstances. So the absolute crucial point is this. Let go of the need to fix. Let go of the illusion of control. Because as a mentor, you're not called to solve the situation. God is already at work in ways you can't even begin to see.
Your job is simply to bring the caregiver before Him. You're sort of the delivery agent of what God can do, quietly aligning yourself with His hidden work.
This lesson reminds us of this truly beautiful promise from 1 Peter 5:7. Cast all your anxieties on Him because He cares for you. Let that sink in. God cares for that caregiver even more deeply than you do. You don't need the perfect words, you don't need eloquent speeches. Just a quiet, faithful presence combined with a very simple, heartfelt prayer becomes an incredibly powerful source of unseen support.
We're going to wrap up this explainer with a question for you to really chew on. What would simple, Christ-centered prayer look like in your mentoring relationships today? Just think about how you can shift from praying over someone to truly praying with them. By leaning into discernment, simplicity, and humility, your prayers can absolutely become a safe, shared experience of God's presence. Thank you so much for joining me for this brief overview of this fantastic Christian Care Mentor lesson. Take these gentle guidelines, let go of the pressure to fix the whole shebang, and simply walk alongside those you care for.